Okay, cool. We're recording, and we definitely just started, and we definitely didn't go over anything important yet. So, um,
Nice.
totally. Okay, pause, stop recording. Okay, I'm assuming it's going. Uh, Anywho, okay. So, yeah, join the team 2A. Um, there's like this really inspirational video I saw. Maybe it wasn't actually. I rewatched it. It didn't seem that inspirational. It seemed kind of cool. We're not going to watch all of it. It was just a. Did it open? It was a documentary by one of the solar car teams. So I'm sure if you haven't heard the name like Eindhoven yet, you'll hear it a lot more. They're like the top solar car team. They compete um, in the World Solar Challenge, which is in Australia. What's neat about them is they've been winning the competition for the last, I think, 4 years, 3 or 4 years now. But when they first started, the first year they joined the competition, they actually won it. So it was a lot of like just a lot of luck, a lot of skill, a lot of hard work that went into it. It's a long-ish documentary, but I was sort of just on YouTube, like looking at solar car videos. This was after like the first general meeting. Stumbled upon this video and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. I spent the entire time watching it, and at the end, I realized like, hey, this is actually something that interests me. Um, and realized like I instantly like realized this was something I wanted to be doing. So if you ever get a chance, I'll share the slides of it after. You guys can look up the video too if you are curious. It is neat. Just it highlights the entire sort of design from design to actually racing to winning the race, and you get to see all their highs and lows documented in this video. But yeah, so I joined in the mechanical team. I worked my way up kind of through it. I was fortunate enough to be handed like a pretty large responsibility early on. I think that helped me develop a lot faster, at least, and kind of get to the level of where I am now. Um, I did a little sketching because I thought those were always fun. So hopefully you guys find this a little entertaining too. So yeah, in fall of 2015, I started my 1A term. Um, I was like, wow, this is so exciting. Everything was very new. It's like, oh, cool, we're actually designing stuff to some extent. And I realized like the actual engineering part, or like a lot of the analysis, the maths, I was really bad at. I hated it actually. Lin Alg and Calc were like major oofs. And I actually was able to get some mentorship with, I think NSOC did mentorships with some of the upper years, like third year, fourth year students. And that really helped me kind of understand kind of in this, you kind of see the same story repeated, which is like people start out, have no idea what they're doing. They kind of get some direction, they get some experience in co-ops. And it's sort of neat to see that story progress, and you realize you're kind of following in their footsteps. I'm sure all students kind of go through a similar process. But that really helps. So I really recommend mentorship in one way or another. It could be through this team, it could be through NSOC, it could be through mutual connections or friends. But definitely knowing someone in a year higher than you is very helpful, kind of navigating all it is Waterloo. So anywho, winter, oh yeah, so I really struggle with getting a co-op job because I have very little relevant experience. I went to one of those NSOC resume reviews, and they're like, your resume is great. And I'm like, I don't know why I'm not getting jobs, but anyways, everyone says it's great. So I had very little experience from the technical side. Um, I was, I'd done some business stuff in high school. I did something through summer company, if any of you had done that, but nothing really talking points about engineering related stuff. And I think it's very hard for all first years to ever find kind of co-ops. It's very much like straw poll, or just luck of the draw with getting jobs sometimes, and it really kind of sets you up down the line. So fortunately for me, I did find a job in continuous. I went to What I Make, where I was one of those What I Make co-ops helping out. And in this case, I was helping out the fourth years a lot of the time with their FYDPs, doing a lot of 3D printing and laser cutting. I found it like quite interesting. I had a lot of fun with the job. Didn't do a whole lot of design, unfortunately. It was more so just kind of running the lab, but it gave me a lot of good exposure to like the project works I saw with upper years, and also just kind of getting to meet some of these fourth years and kind of see their FYDPs work their way through from the start of the winter term to the end when they had their symposium. So yeah, I was very, there was a lot of learning for me to do. I realized I didn't really know what they were doing too much of the time, but I was there to help. So anyways, I had my first co-op. I'm in 4 streams, so winter and then back to school in the summer or spring for my 1B term. Nothing too eventful. It was like just a fun term. The weather in Waterloo is great in the spring, and it's very chill. So I just had a pretty good time. Still had to work all the way into continuous to find a job. This one was a little more desperate. So I worked at a general contracting company called Snyder Construction. they're really small. It's like a family run business, probably has maybe like 20 employees, maybe less, and only like 5 to 6 people in the office. The rest of them are just contractors. And they do a lot of work. They're located in Whitby, Ontario. So I moved to Whitby. I moved to, what's it called? I can't remember now. It'll come back to mind. A little like small town north of Whitby, even, and I was there. Quite nice. Learned a lot about like building sciences. I was there for more of a project management role, so I was helping out with PM stuff, which really just meant like doing a lot of email all the time. So I got to go to sites sometimes and visit stuff, but a lot of it was just spent kind of correspondence wise with email and on the phone. I learned how to talk to people on the phone, which is helpful because that's always very intimidating, and gave me some experience with like construction projects and how they go. But I realized like it just really wasn't for me. I really wasn't interested in HVAC or like building science. I guess you're looking at mechanics and like structures and how they design these buildings, and it wasn't really for me. So that was my second co-op. I came back for 2A in the winter at that point, 2017. I had a friend named Matt. Can't really see him too well, but he was like, "Hey, you should join Midnight Sun." And I was like, "Okay, I'll join Midnight Sun." Um, so he had done his co-op, his first co-op on the team. He had learned a lot, so he was trying to encourage all his friends to join the team at that point. So from there, I started working on, I think, the battery box. Actually, was my first project. We were really small at the time still. I remember like not knowing very much and just trying to help out where I could. Maybe some of you were in similar kind of boats. I think a lot of you were 1B, 2A. So it's a really good time to join because you've had some co-op experience, you know a little bit, but you know you need to know more. But it's like, where do you even start, right? So I did some battery box stuff. I think I was looking at, if you ever saw the last car, the battery boxes are kind of removable from the car, and I was trying to find ways to keep them, or the whole mechanism that would allow them to slide in and out, how they would stay attached to the car. I don't think anything I actually came up with ever got used. I just kind of threw it on like a PowerPoint or something. I also did work on, I think, doors. I was looking at door hinges. And then finally I moved to doing the air body of the car. So the body. And that was the thing that really got me excited, actually. It was like, wow, I could pretend to be a car designer. This is very cool stuff. And the team that was doing it was also pretty new, a lot of like second years, third years. Ultimately, the DRI who was running it, they were going to leave the team. So it ended up getting passed to me. So you have like a second year 2A student who's designing the body of the car or leading the design of the body of the car. Looking back at it now, I'm not sure if it's a wise decision, but at least for me, it was a really cool stepping stone to have. I give the analogy of like a big fish, small pond. So with having small teams, you're able to really stand out and excel if you want to. Often it's not like a free lunch by any means. You definitely do put in the time and the work but for me, it was just a very exciting thing to do. I found it very interesting. And it really showed me the importance of like having ownership and leadership really early on. If you're sort of someone who's just kind of given tasks all the time, it's really hard to develop. But once you have ownership of something and it's like, this is my project now, it's a lot easier to feel responsible and to actually care about the work you're doing. And it's just overall more exciting, more rewarding. So that during co-op, this is the first time I ever got a job in main round. I went to Toyota or TMMC, which this was the Woodstock factory. So they build all the RAV4s for North America there. So a lot of cars, a really like high production rate, I guess. Their takt time, as I call it, I think was, can't remember if it was 50 seconds or 2 minutes, one of the two, I can't remember. But like a really small amount of time. So I'm going to say it's every 1 minute a car rolls off the line essentially. So you're building thousands of cars a day from this factory. It works like a well-oiled machine. And I had a lot of hope in getting to automotive. I thought it'd be a really cool industry to go into. And at least it seemed to be a really good stepping stone just because of the skills you get as working at Toyota. You get that name as well. You get to say, you know, I worked at Toyota, I worked at TMMC. And it shows you had like exposure to a really big company as well. So that was my 2A term going into my third co-op at Toyota. So this was the spring now of 2017. Did I like it? It was all right. I made a lot of money because you get paid quite handsomely and you work a lot of hours. I was working in assembly at Toyota. So I would wake up at like 5 a.m. because the shift would start, I think, at 6 or around 6 a.m. So you had to get there earlier. I moved to Woodstock. It's a nice small town, you know, east of London. A lot of blue collar, a lot of factory. Reminded me a lot of home actually. but I was not the biggest fan of it. I found that manufacturing maybe wasn't for me. The work I was doing there wasn't that much engineering. It was a lot more like putting out fires, just managing stuff, a lot more construction related stuff than I was thinking I would be doing, but not really any design. And I realized like I like design. I don't like managing of an assembly line. Plus, it just sucked up all my time, especially like working early and having to go to sleep at like 9 a.m. because you're just too tired to stay up any later. Kind of sucks. And then for me, you come in on a Saturday as well, often, or even a Sunday. If you go to Sunday, I think you get paid triple time at that point. You make up like your overtime pay goes through the roof, and normally you're clocking 50 to 60 hours a week. So it really just sucked the life out of me, with the benefit of making lots of money. So for some people, they like it. For me, it just wasn't it. So how are we doing for time? 3:30. Cool. So on the side, I was also doing air body stuff. I was like designing a car in my spare time. So on weekends, I would go back to Waterloo, or on like in evenings or on weekends. If I wasn't working, I would be trying to manage stuff remotely with designing the car. Still having a lot of fun that way. So fall 2017, I'm in 2B now. I really decided to put most of my time into the design team over school. I just thought it was a lot more rewarding. I learned a lot more through hands-on, like I'm designing a car versus I'm in class learning about, I don't know, whatever you learn in 2B. I guess like not that much design related stuff, more just math and materials and stuff. And I just found that it wasn't that interesting. I'm not sure if I would recommend that to anyone. I think school is important, but for me at least, I found solar car to be a lot more fun and rewarding. But my grades started to plummet because of my absence in time. I think I skipped a handful of classes that term. Um, During main round, I got a lot of interviews. At that point, I had 3 jobs I could put in my resume, and I could talk all about the solar car. So at that point, I had a friend who's working at ATS, which is a automation company. They're in Cambridge. You can actually see their building if you when you're going off the highway, when you're turning off the 401 onto whatever, like Highway 8, I guess. You can see a big sign that says ATS. So they're down there. One of the larger companies in the KW, like Cambridge area. So they build automation lines. I thought at the time maybe automation or at least mechanical design was where I wanted to be going. So I tried to get experience in doing more of a pure form, like a mechanical sort of role at an automation company. I think I had offers for a couple other companies too at this point. It just really helped to have that resume built up by then. So you learn a lot about like pure mechanical design. I would say there's not really any emphasis on like the actual product or like how the user would interact. It's more so pure specifications, a lot about money, a lot about efficiency, and just like precision. So I learned a lot about it, like mechanical design, like a lot of GD&T, a lot of drawings. But I just didn't find it that exciting for me. Like at this little clevis or bracket on the right, that's like one of the typical things you'd be designing. Everything seemed to be like either a square or like a rectangle or a cylinder. Nothing really ever that crazy, just very sort of simple geometric shapes that were just well toleranced. But for me, I just didn't find that very exciting. I realized that maybe I needed to be going more into the product side. I was thinking at the time, like maybe I can get a job at Apple, or maybe I can get a job working on some sort of real life product as opposed to just assembly lines that are building someone else's product. Um, and at night times or on the weekends, it helped being in Waterloo now because, cool, I would be doing a lot of work on solar car. At this point, this is the term before we left for competition. So a lot of it was, for me, figuring out composites, figuring out the manufacturing processes before we kind of full sent it in 3A to finish the car. So that leads into 3A at that point. So that was the spring of 2018. At that point, it was full on like solar car 24/7. I don't think I went to really any classes at all that term. Maybe like a dozen or so, maybe before midterms at least. And a lot of time was just spent finishing the car. Definitely don't recommend doing that. You know, plot twist, Adrian has to retake the term because his average is like 55. So it makes sense that, you know, you need to be attending school or at least putting some time in to be doing okay. But for me, again, it was all about just let's finish the car. Let's get this thing working. Let's go to competition, because otherwise I won't really have the success or won't have any sort of results to talk about. So Red Bull, that was like a staple at the time. I think the yellow tropical flavor is probably one of the better flavors. The regular Red Bulls are just too sweet, I'm telling you. The tropical ones are pretty good. But anyways, so we left for competition after midterms and came back like the day right before my first final, I think. So it was a lot of time spent. We were headed to the US, so we were in the US for that entire time. People were trying to do some studying, but a lot of it was just driving a solar car across the country, which again, I thought was way cooler than study related stuff. And I thought it would help me a lot with co-op too down the line, having kind of all these lessons learned from this practical side and less from like the textbook school side. But you know, has its cons. You fail a term, you have to spend an extra year, um, and it costs extra money to go through all these terms. Plus, my group mates were not the happiest with me having like abandoned them. 3A is like a very project heavy term. But anywho, because of a lot of that experience, though, I ended up getting some better co-ops, I think. So my co-op, my fifth co-op at this point in the fall of 2018 was at North. They used to be Thelmic Labs. They designed like smart glasses. They were very still under the radar at the time. I think when I was there, they actually launched the focal smart glasses. So really cool time to be around. Obviously, they're not as in good a position now as they were back then. But I was there for product design related stuff. I wasn't doing the actual mechanical design. I was doing something called product validation, and that's where you kind of evaluate a product and do a lot of tests on it to see if it'll, you know, keep up the same specs you're advertising it to. So if you're saying it's waterproof, you know, conducting the tests or at least designing the tests that are going to test its waterproofness. If you're saying it's going to have a lifespan of 2 years, you know, what sort of abuse do these glasses expect to be seeing over those 2 years? And trying to do a lot of like crazy MacGyver stuff actually. So like building these testers that would spray water in the glasses or drop them on a table like 10,000 times to represent how many times you expect to drop these glasses on a table over 2 years. Stuff like that. So it was neat because I was working with the mechanical team a bit to implement improvements if we were seeing we were failing some of these tests. It also gave me just good exposure to the overall product design, I guess, aspect. I found that a lot. I really enjoyed my time doing that kind of stuff, but I found I wanted to be doing more stuff in industrial design and less in mechanical design. With mechanical design, I found it was more purely about the internals of the product, which are very technically oriented, but I was really interested in how products work on the user side, the user facing side. And I learned that it's more to do with industrial design. So at that point I realized, great, I got to learn more about industrial design. So at that point, after that, instead of going back to do 3A, I had a term off because of how it works when you retake a term at least. To stay in the same stream, you have to, I think you have an extra gap term. So for me, I figured instead of trying to switch streams and accelerate back into 3A, I thought I would take the term off to just get some more experience in industrial design and sort of explore some areas I never really had the time to do. At this point, the solar car was a little on the side now because we were looking at the next, so the car we're working on now, this is the initial planning phase. I pulled out my involvement a little bit because I wanted to spend more time on these sort of things, but I was still involved with sort of the laying the architecture down for the next car. But for me, this term was a lot about just getting extra experience. So I actually went to OCAD for a term. I did part-time courses there where I was doing some graphic design, some industrial design courses. And for me, that was just a lot of learning stuff that I never really formally had any education in. I think a lot of it was intuition, but this helped kind of put some concrete name to it all and really helped at least put a tick on my resume as to having some education in industrial design, because I think that's where I was wanting to be headed further on. So come the spring 2019 now, so like 2 terms ago, I was the official interiors lead at that point. I had to do a lot more projects again because I was doing 3A, but properly. So a lot of school. And I was sort of ramping up my resume and portfolio to get a job doing industrial design. So I applied, I think, outside of Waterloo Works at this point. Oh no, I applied through Waterloo Works. There was actually only one job that caught my eye that said industrial design on it, and that was a job at Ecobee. So they designed smart thermostats and smart home products. And they were looking for an industrial design co-op. They actually posted on Waterloo Works, which I didn't expect. But I felt very qualified at the time. So I applied there as one of the few jobs I applied to that term. I had a portfolio that was like tailored just for them, mainly because I had all that time in previous terms to work on a portfolio. and I thought I was pretty well set up at that point to kind of fake it till I made it as an industrial designer. So I actually ended up getting the job though. So at that point, I felt like I was able to kind of break into the industrial design scene for me. And some of you here might also be in a similar boat where you're trying, you'll realize that maybe, mechanical engineering isn't really what excites you the most. But it definitely is possible to kind of break through that with co-op. It's all about sort of how do you get relevant transferable skills, or at least have some education of sorts in that other field. But it's very doable. I think I've seen that for also other, not even just ID related stuff, but even like UX, software, web dev, that kind of stuff tends to be quite doable to do as well. So that was me last term. I was in Toronto for that. And then this is kind of future outlook in this term. So winter 2020 was last term. I still found school really hard. I think my 3B term was one of the harder terms I've had for engineering, just very technical at that point. And of course, the whole COVID thing and having to take courses online kind of sucked. I definitely didn't stay as engaged with my coursework because I had all this free time now. And it was a lot of just like self-study, but it did help me develop some self-study skills and a lot of just like self-learning, which I'm sure anyone in school this term will get a lot of experience with. And then this term, it would be on my last co-op term. I actually had a job lined up in the States for industrial design, but ended up like canceling it, obviously, because of, everything going on that way. So I thought I would at least spend the first kind of few weeks or so of this co-op term sort of just getting back up to speed, helping out with the solar car again. Just a bit of a breather for me before I take on 4A and 4B. It's kind of how I justified it. I call it breaking up with the team because eventually I will have to lead the solar car team. So for me, it's just how do I kind of pull out of all this now? And also just putting a lot of thought into what I'm going to be doing after school. So because I only have like a minute before this ends, I'm going to end this call, put another link into the chat, and then we'll just kind of carry on from where we left off. That's cool. So I'm going to end this right now. Someone asked about the recording. It is recording. I will try and link. I'm not sure what the best way is to upload it yet. I'll let you know though. So I'm going to end this. Please click on the link again if you're still interested in following along.